You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and there's days that I could come to this microphone and we could do a 2-hour episode, and that's today. I have several updates to stories I have brought you previously, and then also this news story about Disney that seems to have overtaken the internet. In October of 2023, Jeffrey Piccolo and his wife, Dr. Kanakpan Tangzwan. Yeah, Kanakpan Tangzwan. Okay, I want to respect her, and I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. Well, those two were enjoying a trip to Disneyland. And trips for the two require planning because Kanakpan was severely allergic to dairy and nuts, deathly allergic. So before dining at the Disney Springs shopping complex, the two had done their research. They had specifically searched for a restaurant that could accommodate Kanakpan's needs. And the Raglan Road Irish pub fit the bill. While there, they asked the server at the pub to double check with the kitchen that the entrees and the sides that Kanakpan had ordered would appropriately address her allergies. They didn't just check once, though. They asked several different staff members before dining that evening. Staff had assured Jeffrey and Kanakpan that her needs would be met. When the orders of broccoli and corn fritter and scallops and onion rings arrived, they did not have allergen-free flags. So Jeffrey and Kanakpan inquired again if the food was allergen-free, and they were told the dishes were safe for her to eat. About 45 minutes later, while shopping alone at a nearby Planet Hollywood, Kanakpan had a severe allergic reaction. She administered an EpiPen, but began having difficulty breathing, and she collapsed. She was taken to the hospital, where she later died. Now in February, a distraught Jeffrey filed a lawsuit against Disney, alleging that his wife died solely from the negligence of the Orlando Disney restaurant. And here's where the internet broke, because last week, Disney responded to the lawsuit saying that Jeffrey had no leg to stand on because of his subscription to Disney+. See, Jeffrey had signed up for the streaming service in November of 2019 when a free month was offered. He then canceled the subscription, but when he enrolled, he agreed to the terms of service, which Disney is saying exempts them from any responsibility in his wife's death in a jury trial. All right, Disney even doubled down, and they said that when Jeffrey purchased the park tickets, he also agreed to terms and conditions in behalf of his wife. Disney says the binding arbitration clause applies for anyone who uses a purchased ticket. Now, Jeffrey's lawyers responded by filing a motion that said Kanakpan could not enter into an agreement because she didn't buy the tickets, and the wording of the terms state that her estate would be responsible. However, she wasn't dead yet, so Jeffrey's lawyers say that just can't fly. But you guys, I haven't even told you the crazy part yet. Jeffrey is suing Disney for $50,000. That's it, $50,000. It's going to cost more for Disney to fight the lawsuit than it would to be to pay out or even settle for a smaller amount. Now, according to the Los Angeles Times, a statement by a Disney spokesperson said the following: "We are deeply saddened by the family's loss. Given that this restaurant is neither owned nor operated by Disney, we are merely defending ourselves against the plaintiff's attorney's attempt to include us in their lawsuit against the restaurant." So basically, Disney feels like they're simply a landlord and they shouldn't be included. But this had me asking, this whole entire story has me asking, what am I signing away when I check the agree to terms box on websites and apps? Am I unwittingly signing away my legal rights like Jeffrey possibly did? Well, an expert with USA Today says, yeah, Disney might just win this lawsuit, citing that the Supreme Court has time and again treated arbitration provisions as binding. And it doesn't seem to matter if it's teeny tiny print in the terms of conditions. Now, businesses add these clauses to avoid class action lawsuits. Companies say they make sure arbitration is fair for consumers, and they argue it's also faster and less expensive than lawsuits. But critics say the secretive process puts consumers at a massive disadvantage, and very few people pursue a legal case through the arbitration system. All right, so let's explain it. What Jeffrey did with Disney Plus is he signed away his right to have a jury trial by clicking the I agree box on the app. And if you think about it, Jeffrey would have had a really great shot at a jury awarding him $50,000, if not more. And that's why the arbitration clauses exist in order to protect businesses. Now, I'm sure we have listeners who think that it's outrageous to sue a business for something that you might say is personal, and that you should manage that issue instead of an employee or a business managing everything for you. So that had me thinking back to a case I read last year where a Florida mother sued McDonald's over a hot chicken nugget from a Happy Meal falling on her daughter's leg and causing second-degree burns. In a jury trial, that woman won $800,000 in that lawsuit. But that's the important part. It was a jury trial. And now we've circled back to why the arbitration clause exists for Disney. But let me argue the other side. Now, Disney is well known for their strict protocols with food allergies. So, did Jeffrey and his wife have reason to believe that they could allow the pub to manage her allergies? If you were on a jury, what would you say? Would you award $50,000 or more? Now, the arbitration process takes a bit, so we won't know for a while how this one will turn out. But Disney isn't alone here. Airbnb and Walmart both have very strict arbitration clauses, and I bet a lot of you have clicked the I agree in the terms of conditions area on those sites. Airbnb was sued by a family of a man that was killed at an Airbnb rental. Now, the man didn't rent the Airbnb. He was just in attendance at a party, and the lawsuit claimed Airbnb had a responsibility to not allow these massive parties at their rentals. But the dead man had an Airbnb account, and he had clicked yes to the terms of agreement. The Nevada Supreme Court ruled that Airbnb could not be included in the civil lawsuit, and any disputes must be handled by arbitration. And in the case of Walmart, a Black family sued the retail giant after one of its employees falsely and without evidence accused the family of shoplifting. But because months prior, one member of the family had signed a contract containing an arbitration clause for the Walmart grocery delivery service, a federal judge ruled that the civil rights lawsuit could not move forward in the courts. So let me know what you think about this lawsuit with Disney, and also about agreeing to the terms of conditions. I do it all the time, and I know you do it all the time. I would love to hear from you. And now to our updates. And this first one, it's a quick one. I brought you this story in May of this year when General Hospital actor Johnny Wachter was gunned down by 4 men who were caught by Johnny when they were trying to steal his catalytic converter. Okay, on that late night or early morning confrontation, Johnny had been walking a fellow coworker to her car. Johnny was moonlighting by bartending at the Level 8 nightclub in downtown Los Angeles, and he was making sure his coworker safely made it to her vehicle. As they were walking, they neared Johnny's car, and they could see that the men had Johnny's car jacked up in order to steal the valuable auto part. Well, Johnny stepped in front of the young woman to protect her, just as one of the men shot Johnny in the chest. Johnny died later at an LA hospital. Now, the young woman, I just want you to know, she was physically unharmed. Now, California authorities have finally arrested 4 men in connection to the murder. Robert Barcelo, Sergio Estrada, and Lionel Gutierrez. They're all 18 years old, and they were linked to the murder by fingerprints that were recovered off of the floor jack used on Johnny's car. Now, the 4 seem to be associated with the Florencia 13 gang out of Los Angeles. A 4th suspect, 22-year-old Frank Olano, was arrested for just being an accessory to the May 25th murder. All 4 are jailed on a $2 million bond, and I'll continue to watch this case for you. And our second update, from Hollywood again. This time, Matthew Perry's doctors and a personal assistant have been arrested in connection to his overdose death last year. 54-year-old Matthew Perry, by his own admission, had struggled for years with substance abuse. Following his death, it became clear he was surrounded by people who would take a big payoff to provide Perry with ketamine. So what's ketamine? Well, it's an anesthetic drug used to put people to sleep for surgery. But the drug has become popular in therapy and also recreationally. This is because it's got an ability to calm anxiety, and it also creates hallucinogenic experiences like a little bit of a euphoria or maybe short-term memory loss. Private clinics are using the drug to treat depression and other mental health disorders. And Perry, well, he'd approached a clinic asking for treatment. They complied, but the therapy wasn't enough for Perry. The doses were just too meager. He asked for more ketamine or higher doses, and when he couldn't get it from the clinic, he reached out to Dr. Salvador Palencia. Now, he's an internist who goes by the nickname Dr. P. Following Perry's request for ketamine, Dr. P then reached out to a fellow physician, Dr. Mark Chavez. Text messages between the two revealed that they were trying to decide how much they could charge Perry for the ketamine. Those messages read like this: "I wonder how much the moron will pay." And then a response of, "Let's find out." Chavez said he could provide liquid vials of ketamine and also ketamine lozenges. Okay, that's when they compound the drug and it can be taken orally. He said he could provide those. Chavez admitted to investigators that he obtained the lozenges by filling out a fraudulent prescription. Once Chavez had the drugs, Dr. P stopped at Chavez's house in Costa Mesa. He picked up the drugs and some gloves and some syringes. Then on September 30th, he drove 56 miles to Perry's home and he injected him with 2 doses of ketamine. He left behind at least 1 dose, and he collected $4,500 from Matthew Perry. The next day, on October 1st, Dr. P and Dr. Chavez chatted over text messages about getting more ketamine for Perry and charging him high dollar for those doses. Dr. P allegedly admitted on text that he wasn't really familiar on how to treat patients with ketamine. It really wasn't in his wheelhouse. And investigators say that Matthew Perry was asking for the drug to help him quit smoking. But here's the problem. Ketamine isn't used for that. And prosecutors allege Dr. Chavez should have known that the ketamine they were supplying wouldn't help Perry with his addiction to cigarettes. Well, on October 2nd, Matthew Perry's assistant, 59-year-old Kenneth Iwamasa, texted Dr. P asking to purchase more ketamine. Then Dr. P turned around and texted Dr. Chavez, writing that if the injections go well on the second meeting with Perry, then they will probably have a repeat customer. Dr. Chavez allegedly texted back that they should do everything they could to make that repeat customer thing happen. Well, 2 days later, Kenneth, that's the assistant, he texted Dr. P again to order more of the drug. And now the addiction was solidified. For the next several days, text messages between Kenneth and Dr. P allegedly show Perry asking for more and more of the drug. And the doctors complied. On October 10th, the craving for ketamine was so strong that Perry met Dr. P in a parking lot of a Long Beach aquarium for a very public injection. Now, this led to some controversy between the two doctors. Authorities say Dr. Chavez scolded Dr. P for doping people in cars and in public places where children could be present. Then on October 12th, so that's just 2 more days, Perry received a legitimate ketamine infusion treatment at a private clinic. But it wasn't enough for his addiction. Kenneth called Dr. P to buy more ketamine that afternoon. Matthew Perry and Kenneth and Dr. P, well, they all met up at Perry's home, where the doctor administered a large dose to the actor, which caused his systolic blood pressure to spike and his body to basically freeze up. And he froze up so severely that he couldn't talk or move. All of this according to the court documents that were released. Now, Dr. P told Kenneth they couldn't go that far again, but he also went ahead and left additional doses at Perry's home. Now, the supply chain started to break down. Dr. Chavez told Dr. P that an investigation had been launched by the Medical Board of California concerning missing ketamine from a clinic that Dr. Chavez was affiliated with. Well, Dr. P, he had a different solution. He said the two should start their own private clinic with ketamine infusions available to patients. Dr. Chavez wasn't all in on this business venture with Dr. P. He wrote in a text that it didn't matter what he thought about starting a business. It mattered what the California Medical Board thought. Well, at this point, the two doctors had charged Matthew Perry $55,000 for 20 vials of ketamine. Each one of those vials actually cost about $12. Now, with his source of ketamine drying up, Matthew Perry turned to another associate, or what some may call a drug dealer. Eric Fleming was contacted by Perry and asked to supply ketamine for daily injections. Perry introduced Eric to Kenneth, and a new source was established. Eric told Kenneth he had a female contact nicknamed Ketamine Queen who could get them high-quality ketamine. Investigators say Jasveen Senga, that's the Ketamine Queen, well, they say she supplies the drug to many celebrities. 2 days after that massive dose that left Matthew Perry frozen, Eric the drug dealer delivered 2 appetizer-sized samples of ketamine to Perry's home for $180. Kenneth then contacted Eric and had him deliver 25 vials of the drug for $5,500. But by this time, Kenneth had gotten wise. He wanted in on the drug deal. So Kenneth pocketed $500 for organizing the exchange. Now, Kenneth is getting his piece of the money, but so is Eric, because he was allegedly charging Matthew Perry $220 per vial, and he was only paying Senga $160 per vial. Well, it took Perry 10 days to blow through 25 vials of ketamine. So Eric saw dollar signs, and he delivered another 25 vials and also several ketamine lollipops as a bonus for buying such a high volume of drugs. In that last week of his life, Kenneth was injecting Perry 6 to 8 times a day. Then on October 28th at 8:30 in the morning, Matthew Perry took his first injection of the day from Kenneth. 4 hours later, Kenneth administered another dose while Matthew was lounging and watching a movie. Just 40 minutes later, Matthew Perry allegedly told Kenneth he wanted to get in the hot tub, but first, he wanted an extra large dose of ketamine. It had only been 40 minutes since his last dose. But Kenneth filled a syringe and injected Matthew Perry anyway. Kenneth then left the home with Matthew in the hot tub, and when Kenneth returned, he found his boss dead, floating in the hot tub. Now, Kenneth had done his work while first responders were traveling to Matthew Perry's home. He rid the home of any traces of ketamine, but autopsies tell tales, and Perry was found to have the same level of ketamine in his blood system that someone would have during general anesthesia. And that's when investigators began digging into Kenneth's cell phone data, digging into Perry's medical history, and all the parties began turning on each other. Last week, court documents showed that 5 people have been charged with conspiracy to distribute ketamine. We've got 2 doctors, Chavez and Placencia, then 2 drug dealers, Senga and Eric, and of course, we have his trusted assistant, Kenneth. U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada said at a news conference that the defendants, quote, took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction to enrich themselves. And then he went on to say these defendants were more interested in profiting after Mr. Perry than caring about his well-being. As of now, in exchange for information, Dr. Chavez has agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine. Drug dealer Eric has pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine and a count of distribution of ketamine resulting in death. And trusted assistant Kenneth has pled guilty to a count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine causing death. He also admitted to injecting Perry with ketamine without medical training, including performing several injections on the actor the day he died. Kenneth is yet to be sentenced, but he could face up to 15 years in prison. Eric could face up to 25 years, and Dr. Chavez could face up to 10 years. So that leaves us with 2 people, Ketamine Queen and Dr. P, and they've yet to enter into plea deals. Sangha could face up to life, and Dr. P could serve up to 120 years. And it's really understandable here. The big fish was Sangha, the ketamine queen. When authorities raided her home, that's known as the Sangha Stash House, they discovered a drug-selling emporium. And for me, Kenneth and his perceived relationship with Perry is just so sad. Matthew Perry trusted someone in his most private spaces, and Kenneth was profiting from the ketamine purchases instead of caring for Matthew Perry. Now, in his memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, Matthew Perry wrote that he hoped to be remembered for helping others overcome addiction. And in a 2022 interview, just months before his death, Matthew Perry said the following: "The kind of message that I guess I give out with this book is don't give up. There's help out there." Unfortunately, Matthew Perry sought help from the wrong kind of people. And now, this update to a story I brought you on May 23rd of this year about the potential loss of Graceland. Okay, when we talked about the loan foreclosure on the famed Elvis property back in May, Lisa Marie Presley's estate was facing foreclosure on the Memphis landmark. But since then, the feds have gotten involved, and the famed Graceland estate has avoided being auctioned off to the highest bidder because a 53-year-old woman hatched the whole scheme, and the estate never even had a loan attached to the property. So let's start at the beginning. Graceland was owned by Elvis Presley up until his death in 1977. 3 beneficiaries were listed for the estate: Elvis's grandmother, Minnie Mae, his father, Vernon, and his only child, Lisa Marie. Now, both Minnie and Vernon passed away in the pursuant years, which left Lisa Marie as the sole owner for many years. In 2016, Lisa Marie made an amendment to her will where she listed Riley, her daughter, as the sole trustee to her estate. Then Lisa Marie unexpectedly passed away in early 2023, and that left Riley as the owner of Graceland. Privately, there was a small dispute between Elvis's former wife Priscilla and Lisa Marie, who was Priscilla's daughter. Now, Priscilla seemed to believe that she deserved a portion of the property, and she also questioned the validity of the will that left the entire property to Riley. Well, finally, the two settled, Riley and Priscilla. They settled the dispute quietly, and a judge awarded Riley the ownership in August of last year. And Riley didn't change much to the property. It had already been remodeled into a museum in 1982. I've been through the museum at Graceland, and it's kind of a mind bend. What used to be considered a mansion in comparison to the wealth that superstars on Elvis's level experience today is much different. But Riley didn't get many months of just letting the museum see over 500,000 visitors each year and just continue to make money. Because in early 2024, loan documents were produced that indicated that Lisa Marie had borrowed against the estate. Now, the documents from Nosany Investments, a private lending group, they claimed that Lisa Marie had borrowed $3.8 million and that she had used Graceland as collateral. Once the documents were produced, Riley's lawyers filed a separate lawsuit to stop the May 23rd auction of Graceland. And in that lawsuit, Riley stated that the signatures on the loan paperwork were not those of her late mother. Now in enters the feds. They began investigating the documents after the judge tossed the whole thing. And they began trying to figure out who is Nosany Investments. And that led them to a small town in Missouri and to that 53-year-old woman whose given name is Lisa Janine Finley. But she also goes by Lisa Howell, Lisa Holden, and Lisa Solons. As the feds were working the case to discover how Lisa Finley duped everyone, NBC News was also working the case, and when they knocked on Lisa's door in June, she told reporters she had no idea what they were talking about. Then, shortly after their visit to her home, NBC News received an email in clunky Spanish that was supposedly written by Gregory Nosany of Nosany Investments. In the email, he writes that he and his associates sit back and laugh at all American idiots and that they watch them make fools of themselves. The email writer then added, come find us in Nigeria. The feds were like, nah, Nigeria has nothing to do with this. And they did a deeper dive into Lisa. And here's what they say they have discovered, this according to an affidavit that was released last week. In an attempt to extort $2.85 million out of Riley and the Graceland estate, Lisa Finley fabricated loan documents. She forged signatures of Lisa Marie Presley and a Florida state notary. She then filed a claim in a Los Angeles court and also a fake deed of trust at the registrar's office in Memphis. Then Lisa Finley published a phony foreclosure notice in May in a Memphis newspaper announcing that Graceland would be auctioned to the highest bidder. You guys, that's a crazy amount of work that one woman could fake. She could fake all of that and get as far as she did, clear to a Los Angeles courtroom where in May a judge dismissed all of it. Do you think she thought at one point she was going to go undetected? Well, she didn't go undetected. And on Friday, she was charged with mail fraud and aggravated identity theft. The charges carry a minimum of 2 years in prison for the identity theft and up to 20 years for the mail fraud. And Graceland is safely in the hands of the rightful owner, Riley, the daughter of Lisa Marie Presley. And one last quick story, because we've already talked about chicken nuggets in the McDonald's lawsuit, so let's talk about chicken wings at the school cafeteria. 68-year-old Vera Lydell was sentenced to prison last week for stealing $1.5 million worth of chicken wings from the school cafeteria where she worked. All right, those chicken nuggets, wings, whatever, they were stolen over a 2-year time frame from 2020 to 2022. The Illinois school cafeteria worker pled guilty to the crime and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Okay, here's how she operated what authorities are calling a criminal enterprise. As the director of the school lunch program, she would place orders for chicken wings with the school district's main food supplier. But when the wings, which were meant for underprivileged children, would be delivered, Vera would keep the food and charge the district for the invoice. Now, this caused the school district to exceed their annual budget just in one half of a year by $300,000. And that was all caught when a review was conducted just mid-year. Well, Vera ordered 11,000 cases of chicken wings that she kept for herself. Chicago had some of the tightest lockdowns during the COVID pandemic. And so Vera would order the food, and kids were meant to take the food home with them. They could show up to the school because they weren't attending classes like regular. So they could show up to the school and get take-home lunches to feed them during the pandemic. And that's how Vera racked up the orders of 11,000 cases of chicken wings. No kids were there to eat them, and so she just kept ordering, and she just kept keeping them. Well, when Vera pleaded guilty last week and her story made the news, NFL star Chris Jones stepped in. The Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle tweeted out that he would pay for the chicken nuggets that got stolen if Vera would be let out of prison. Okay, that's generous, right? But it's way more complicated than that. Vera has already pled guilty. You just can't undo that prison sentence. She does have 30 days to vacate her plea and pay restitution instead, but she's the one who has to enact that, not Chris Jones. And her lawyer has said the mild-mannered older woman told him that her future is in God's hands. Well, Vera has had previous trouble with finances. She has twice filed for bankruptcy, and she admits that gambling has gotten her into most of her trouble. She is currently housed at the Logan Correctional Facility. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see if NFL star Chris Jones is going to pony up $1 million for stolen chicken wings. All right, that's your Monday episode of Rise in Crime. I love that you're here. Thanks for joining me. I love working with Oh No Media, of course, because Peyton's my daughter, but also because I feel like we bring you guys a great amount of content and we're really working to represent the victims. So if you love what we're bringing you, please share this show with a friend. We love 5-star reviews and positive comments, and it really helps when you like and follow all of our social media and especially our YouTube accounts that we have here at Oh No Media. Again, that's Rise in Crime, Into the Dark, and Murder with My Husband. You can join me again on Thursday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.